Good afternoon. Welcome to Martalks. I'm Rosenstein, your host. Martalks is where we discuss contemporary issues in the e-commerce and martech universe. And today we're joined by the esteemed founder of Pimberly, the PIM provider within the MACH Alliance. Martin, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to our discussion.
First, I just wanted to start off with, what does Pimberly do in the context of the MACH ecosystem, and what differentiates it from the legacy PIM solutions that are your progenitors?
Quite simply, Pimberly manages everything to do with the digital persona of a product, regardless of whether that's a piece of data like the length of the product or the description of the product, or whether it's a digital asset, whether that everybody thinks about images and videos. But actually, when you talk about more technical products, it might be, the CAD drawings, it might be the 3D sort of rendered image, etc. It might be test certificates, it might be compliance test data, it could be anything. So, and we call that unstructured data. So you've got your normal data, which is your descriptions, your length, your dimensions, your weight, your packing, etc. That's your structured data. And then your unstructured data, which is images, etc. So what Pimberly does is that ultimately it allows you to sort of seamlessly and easily create great product data such that you can present the best possible digital representation of your product wherever that needs to be sent. So, and most people think about websites, obviously, but obviously the other areas could be, especially if you've got bricks and mortar, it could be your digital point of sale, it could be your digital shelf tickets. If you've got showrooms, it might be digital displays. If you're B2B, it might be a digital data pool where your B2B customers can log in and pull down product data that they need for their systems. So what we do, essentially, we're a little bit in the middle where we make it super easy to pull in data from all the disparate areas where that might be, and that could be within your organization, or it could be external to your organization, such as with all your vendors and suppliers. We then basically understand what your external systems need, your sales platforms, etc. And we basically either try and create that database automatically from algorithms, etc. Or if there's elements to it that we can't create automatically, then we'll say, right, okay, we've got this data missing. Who is it that owns this data? And actually do workflows and processes to those individuals to say, hey, we've got this product in this category with this missing data, or this data that's not validated, it's got missing X or Y. Please, can you do something about it? And basically allow a business to understand, to automate everything, make it easy, but also try and see where there are bottlenecks or where there are areas that they could actually improve further through further automation.
Well, that's fascinating stuff. So obviously what Pimberly does, and PIM in general in a MACH context, is allow for that omnichannel commerce to take place. But it's fascinating you actually have the functionality that if something's missing, it's like, we really don't know how many flavors this comes in, or we really don't know if this is going to be compliant with a fitment within a greater item. That's pretty interesting, and cues the responsible party to fill in that data.
Exactly. And most of the time, if you can, if there's some element of logic around it, then you can create that automation, or that, if you like, some people will say intelligence, but ultimately it's an automation within your PIM solution. So a prime example would be, that's easy to visualize, would be, I've got a category of products that are laptops or notebooks. I've also got a category of products that are laptop and notebook cases. How do I know which case is compatible with which laptop? well, you know the laptop external dimensions and you know the laptop case external dimensions. So it isn't beyond most people to be able to write down and say, actually, if my height, width, and depth is within a certain percentage of my laptop case, then that's an optimum fit for that laptop. And that's just a simple example of where you can use common basic logic, but programmatically put that into your PIM so that it automatically enables you to create the connection and relationship between products that allows you to then give your end consumer, whether that's a B2B or B2C, the ability to have not just the right selection, but a complete selection, and one that with some high degree of confidence that it will be correct for them. So therefore, not only reducing returns, but increasing customer advocacy, etc.
Well, I wish that there was a functionality that could determine which case for a phone would be prone to less dropping. That's an issue that I have. And, I hope that's in the roadmap. I mean, that would certainly enhance my customer journey, not to mention my need to replace my phone as often as I have. But, in terms of, your motivation to actually found Pimberly, I mean, beginning a startup is obviously a tremendous set of challenges. You've really got to have a core belief in delivering that value. What was it that led you to create Pimberly?
My previous sort of lives have been in the IT managed services, where I've had a number of businesses that I've grown. This is my first company that I've founded, where I've grown those businesses, and it's all about you're in and those people that are in IT managed services or actually any business where you're supplying products and services that fundamentally you don't manufacture, so therefore you're reselling or sort of beholden to brands, as it were. So it's all about you way to differentiate and maximize on your margins is all about customer care, customer service, the service wrap, the whole sort of product in with a capital P sort of product experience, which is all about the whole life cycle of what you deliver. And one of my last businesses, we've focused on the creative industry, so that's film, TV, music, etc., where we're supplying IT managed services and solutions. And we were increasingly wanting to allow them, and so were they, to actually do repeat orders for equipment, etc. Sometimes up to tens of thousands of dollars at a time, but it was the same equipment, same spec, etc. They didn't necessarily need to or want to speak to a technician to be able to place that order, and so obviously that pulls you from a B2B point of view into allowing them to have or creating a more an online experience for them that's increasingly consumerized. And one of the barriers that we found straight away was product data. This was highly technical product with lots of different attribution. There's lots of highly configurable elements to it. There was conditional configurability. So if you picked option A, that means that you couldn't do option B and D. And so we really struggled with it. And we could see that this was an industry issue. And even some of the bigger brands that we were dealing with, the amount of or the data and the quality of data they had, and as I come back to the digital representation of their product, including images and all that sort of thing, was very lacking. And so that's really what sort of spurred us on to think, well, can we, what is there out there? And there wasn't anything. We actually had a small development team that was focused on a very niche project management tool around providing e-catalogs and catalogs to the retail fashion industry. And so we basically challenged that team to actually come up with a solution that would do what we wanted. But from the get-go, it had to be able to deal with structured and unstructured data, because we could see that going forward, it was more about the sort of the visual representation of a product. And that's more so. I mean, Apple's just launched its Vision Pro, and you can imagine what the purchase experience is going to be like in terms of evaluating products in the future. And so that's what spurred us on to actually develop it. And we sort of incubated that within my previous business. And then I'm very fortunate that my previous business, we sold it, and I basically retained Pimberly because that was my baby, as it were. And unfortunately for me, the Pimberly staff at the time, they saw me once a month, and then literally they got me every day. So I think they'd probably see it as differently to me, but that's how it all started. And from a premise of a full service customer support, because that's my background in terms of understanding and being from a business point of view. And also separately, I have a family business that owns a furniture brand in the UK, so making furniture. And we sell it into independents and et cetera, et cetera. So again, I could see the sort of issues that we had there. When I got interested in this for my business, I would then talk to the family about the family business. Yeah, you know what? It's just as bad for us. So all those things came at once. And then the other bit, which comes back to the startup bit, is I'd never done a startup. And so you sat there. I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs will be like this. I'm sure they have it. If you've never done one, and you're like, well, how hard can that be? It's and as we all know, it's a massive emotional roller coaster, at least in the early days. So yeah.
Well, I think that you've probably discovered that your team seeing you every day has not been terribly disruptive to them. Although I do notice a lot of people leaving behind you. Those of you that are just listening to this, you don't see Martin sitting in his office, but there's people that are marching by the window. I don't think those people are leaving for good. They're just they're just mulling around, but that's fine.
Yeah, it's 5:15, so we'll let them have it. And it is Valentine's evening.
Yes. Well, I'm sorry I didn't bring you any flowers, but thank you so much
That's
for
okay.
for joining us on a Valentine's Day. I hope you remembered some to
I
bring
did.
home.
I did. That was sorted. I got the photographic evidence from my better other half this morning, so I got big ticks for that.
Back to Pimberly, the promise of mock architecture and mock is that we'll be able to allow every customer to have a very unique journey with a brand. And we all look at products and consume products and envision products in our lives differently. And having the right content, because to quote the great Dean Barker, e-commerce is a content play. It's the heart of the action. So the more you know about how someone wants to use or will potentially use your product in relation to other products they may have or their lifestyle or what they've been doing that day or that week, the more data you need within around that product, and that data needs to be accessible to everything within your commerce and your martech stack. So it sounds like that was the issue you were coping with and pursuing, and now that you've actually started a company to do it, you're neck deep in how difficult it is to do it well. And I'll wish you kudos for that as well. But in terms of your contrasting having an external PIM with what most merchants are kind of stuck with the monolithic providers like Salesforce or Shopify. What are some of the other differences, if any, that we haven't touched on that you'd want to mention?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is to understand, because people will say, well, what does it mean by composable? Down, from a company like Pimberly, from a solution like Pimberly, and what does it mean about, from a Mac point of view? So on a composable bit, what I would explain is that, when we think about developing the solution, we're thinking about three things. There's the one thing, which is, we want to be absolutely best of breed in terms of dealing with product data, structured and unstructured, and I'll come on to that in terms of what are the things that you can then do that a monolith can. But then the other things that a monolith doesn't have to worry about is that we have to be able to ingest data super easily and be able to integrate super easily with incoming data. And then we need to be on the output side. We need to be able to, be able to export, if you like, if you're thinking about data, or send data in whatever format is required by the receiving platform. So when you're creating a composable software, piece of software, there's those different facets that you need to think about. Yes, there's what is the best of breed functionality that you're trying to create, but also you've got to say, but I've got to be completely open. Whatever you see on the screen has got to be accessible by other platforms as well for when we bolt it in, etc. And also, I need to make sure that my method of integrating with me and me integrating with another platform or multiple platforms ultimately is super easy and is common and is well understood by your typical sort of dev team, etc. So that when you come to pulling things together, and it's not just about languages, it's about the things that people don't think about, like throughput rates, and how you deal with that, timing out issues, so it's all those sort of things that a monolithic sort of thing probably never has to even worry about, and that's what makes it hard. Now, coming back to why would you have what can an external PIM do that my existing platform can't do? Well, for a start, you're looking at data. We don't care what type of data it is, so we don't mind. From our point of view, as I said, we don't mind whether it's sort of static, sort of structured data or unstructured data. Who knows what new files and file formats are coming down the road? I mean, 2 years ago we were all talking about NFTs, etc., weren't we? I mean, it's still sort of there, but that's yet another file format type thing. So then the other thing is that, again, probably pre-COVID, we were all really getting into hyper personalization. Being all good marketeers will tell you that if you can speak to the consumer individually about them, and that, well, how does that translate in a product? Well, that might be as simple as I'm selling a lady's dress. I know what size you are, I know, etc. So why am I serving up images that are not your body shape when actually I could serve up an image that is your body shape? And actually, I've just said that I'm buying it for a prom or I'm buying it for a wedding. Why don't you show me those images in that use case, etc.? And so in a PIM, a modern PIM platform, what you get is that you can have pretty much unlimited dimensions to your SKUs. So you can say, well, I can have, that's a SKU, but I can have multiple different variations of the images, of the descriptions, etc., etc. And so long as the receiving platform is capable of being able to personalize at that level, we can serve that up for them. The other thing is that, it's unlimited attribution. So just thinking about whether it's sustainability or traceability of products, that in itself is a whole new set of attribution that you're going to have to capture. And in a modern PIM, again, we build them in such a way that it's super flexible. You can keep adding attributes. It doesn't matter what they are. It doesn't matter whether it's a test certificate or it's a date or it's a number or it's a text string or whatever. So again, you can do that. And then other things are around what a lot of people just day to day struggle with, which is, just manipulating prices or manipulating, bulk editing sort of things. So marketing team suddenly turned up and you say, we're not calling that, the demographic now calls that color, I don't know, satin beige. And we need to change all our sort of like beige and add satin beige in there. And so in a PIM, you can very, very easily sort of like go through and replace all that thing, but in a controlled fashion, with audit trails, with being able to undo it, etc. So you've got all that sort of governance around it. Other things that you can do can be around sort of automating sort of campaigns. So if you take Black Friday, you can load up all your images, your descriptions, everything for products that's in that campaign. And you can say in a modern PIM, you can say, right, on that day, I want you to flip my prices, images, descriptions to that. And then on that day, you can flip it back. And not only that, it's there and it's kept there for next time as well. Because many customers, you'll see them and they'll say, well, we sort of like, it's Valentine's Day, like it is today. The way we do our campaign for Valentine's Day is we dig in our emails to find out which was the last email last year that approved the copy for this product. And then we say, right, okay, what did we do last year? Again, in a modern PIM, all that's in there. It's kept there historically. And you just say, right, okay, let's then invoke that campaign again. Let's tweak it and off we go. So I could sit here for hours and hours and hours giving you lots of use cases that say these are the sorts of things you can do. And why is that? That's because it's all we care about. This is what we do. And we don't have to worry about checkout. We don't have to worry about order management processing. We don't have to worry about tax regimes. We don't have to worry about anything else like a Shopify does, like whatever. So and that's ultimately what Composable is about. It's about best of breed.
Do you have a particularly favorite business case thus far in your deployments that you'd like to share with us?
We deploy to PIMs to both to manufacturers and distributors or wholesalers and retailers. And so there's different use cases, and I'll do a quick one. So so we recently had a customer that's got literally millions of SKUs, and they basically sell parts. Certain parts will fit multiple different products. One of the huge things for them was actually being able to quickly understand if a part goes end of life, what products does that impact, and how can you visualize that? And if you think about it from a commercial point of view, it's sort of like not just about, there's not just the interesting element of it. It's basically, well, if there are, let's say there are only 1,500 parts of these left in stock, should I buy them all? Because if I buy them all, I've captured the market for all those products that ultimately might need those parts because without them, those products can't work. So that's, and one of the things that a modern sort of SaaS PIM can do is not only allow you to sort of like very easily to visualize that on screen if you're a user, but also to be able to sort of create some of those more complicated logic around, well, what if this, that, then that, and to give that sort of, and give the buyers or the senior management more information to make very commercial decisions that they might not have been able to do before. So that's one interesting use case. From a retail point of view, as in retail stores point of view, and another sort of interesting use case is to actually ingest, I guess people call it now digital shelf analytics, but to start ingesting the digital shelf analytics and display it within the PIM. So by that, I mean, for example, right down at SKU level, how often has that SKU been seen, on the website, actually viewed? How often, how much, you probably not down at SKU level, but how much are we spending in terms of advertising on that product? How many times has it been added to basket? How many times has it been sort of bought, etc.? And what you can then do within the PIM is actually see, I'd say right down at SKU level, whether you've got any opportunities where you can say, well, actually, I've got a very saleable, if you like, I like clickability, if you like. I've got something that gets highly clicked on and gets bought, but it's very low visibility. It's very rare that it actually gets surfaced. And basically, well, actually, guess what? If you actually promote that more, whether that's on your sort of your product listing page, or you actually chuck a bit of advertising against it, that the conversion rate's very high. But then also looking at other SKUs where you say, well, I'm spending a heck of a lot of money. It's got in a lot of visibility, but nobody's clicking on it. And so then you're saying, well, well, maybe there's something wrong with the actual product content there. So what if we change? If it's fashion, the usual thing is either it's not a great product, or if you actually change the image out, it can have a much better impact. Because a lot of people buy based on what things look like, especially in homewares and things. So that's been a really interesting use case where we're actually bringing, because at the end of the day, a PIM is just a repository of data, and so actual shelf analytics is not difficult. It's just data, but it's then how you then present it to the end users such that they can make informed decisions and maximize their margins ultimately.
So PIM obviously is going to provide that merchant with the ability to really inspect why something that should be moving, given everything else in that category or on that shelf, is. And I think that's a magnificent functionality to have. Well, let's talk very briefly, if we could, about the sort of partners that you've been working with. First, on the solution side, what sort of partners has Pimberly been engaged with to great effect?
In a PIM world, if you like, you've probably got two constants. One would be your platform that's feeding the PIM, and usually that would be ERP platforms. And then also, obviously, where are you actually pushing the product data to? And that, for most part, will be ecom platforms. So you sort of your mainstay will always be that you work in either directly with an SI that's helping you sort of interface within an ecom platform, or multiple ecom platforms, because you get a larger customer that's multi-geography. They usually will have different ecom platforms for different geographies, just because it might sometimes they might be, or they might have a different ecom platform because it's easier to do a test in that geography to just spin up an easy one, and then they might roll out the more heavyweight platform once they're up and running there. And then from an ERP point of view, obviously, it's especially if you're a multi-brand reseller, usually you're getting your SKU data that's initiated from the ERP. But also you can be pulling in that data directly from the thing. So the partners, that we, from an SI point of view, partners that we've been working with in the US would be partners like Luminous Labs, Orium, all great folks. In the UK, people like And Digital. In terms of ecom platforms, BigCommerce would be one that we see as quite a very nice, friendly sort of thing. Elastic Path. From an ERP point of view, you tend to find that people have got an ERP and they're staying on it. So usually, especially in the US, you'll be coming across, that you're always interfacing with things like NetSuite or some of the Microsoft products as well, and OMS platforms like Bright Pearl are very, very, very easy platforms to work with. So as a few, there are lots more, and I'm sure they're all going to be getting on my email and saying you didn't mention me, but there you are.
Well, this isn't the Academy Awards, so I don't think you have to thank everyone. But we'll put them in the notes. We'll make sure that they get their chance. Are you seeking to add partners to your network at this time?
Definitely. I mean, we're not a massive PIM, and we don't. So we're not. We're we're not sort of like, what we're looking for are people, our partners, that want a fairly, tight relationship where we can work sort of seamlessly. I mean, ultimately what you're trying to do is create an amazing sort of customer experience and make it as frictionless for the customer, as in the supplier, the person that's going to have your solution, as possible. So, any partners out there that are looking for, somebody that when we're not sort of trying to get, dozens and dozens of partners. We want to work with a few great partners, and it's similar with our customer base. We are not trying to boil the ocean. We want to work with customers that share the sort of the vision of the customer journey, and because it is a long-term partnership. This is not a plug and play product ultimately. So yeah, and then from a technology point of view, clearly interesting things around search, around. I mean, everybody talks about AI. Try not to go into it too much or whatever, but where there's elements in there, and then there's more sort of innovative, especially around OMS, platforms, because that for a customer becomes the next obvious barrier to expanding into multi marketplaces. Is I've got to actually capture all these transactions. I've got to deal with them all. Stock management becomes a major issue. So partners in those sort of spheres are always interesting if they're innovative.
Well, you began your career as an auditor in finance, and how has that squared with being the leader at a startup that's all about taking risks?
Yeah, well, probably ultimately, if you rang them up, they probably said, "I want a very good auditor." So,
Oh, geez. I hope
so
that
yeah,
those books aren't still being
well,
examined.
that's a
Or
long
the,
time ago. I'm sure.
oh,
I
geez.
think the statute of limitations way expired way by now. But no, I mean, look. I majored in physics, laser physics, and when I left college or university in the UK, I came from a reasonably humble background, and my number one thing was earning money. And at the time, going into finance, well, it still is. Going into finance was a pretty good way of earning a decent salary, as it were. But then, and what I enjoyed about that, I went and worked for Deloitte, was that the bit that I learned from that, two things. One was that's not what I wanted to be. Yep. And then the other thing was that because you're at such a big brand like that, you got to interface at a very young age with a lot of entrepreneurs who are running businesses, and that is the bit that really said to me, "No, I'm in the wrong place here. That's where I want to be." And that's how it all started. So first of all, it was going for the money, and then it was thinking, actually, yeah, this is okay, but that's way better, and I want some of that.
Well, I'm just going to take a moment to take my hat off to the brilliant recruiter at Deloitte who saw, a bright young fellow with a degree in laser physics and thought, I think he should be an auditor, and we're going to bring him in. Of course, all of that litigation is long behind us, so
Yeah.
who's to say whether they were right or wrong? All we know is that thanks that you've ended up where you are today. But you know, you got exposed to an awful lot of entrepreneurs, as you said, you always do in the audit departments for the Big Five at that point, and you've certainly had to make your own way as a leader. But was there ever some leader that you came across that you thought of as just a great visionary or mentor that you've modeled yourself after or follow?
Yeah, there's a couple that, I mean, immediately springs to mind. That when at one of my first roles after Deloitte, I worked for a guy called Alan Vos, and none of your listeners will have heard of, but and he sadly passed away way too early. And I remember going to see him on his sort of last bit, and he just said to me, because we all work crazy hours, and he just said to me, don't forget to get off and smell the roses. And that made a massive impact on my, because you think, yeah, ultimate, yeah. So what he meant on that, So, and then another person was another guy. Won't say because still alive and everything. So, and that was, I thought I was taking risks, and but I wasn't, And then I met a guy that was a proper entrepreneur, risk taker, because I'd grown up in finance, obviously. So you've always got this sort of like an anchor of sensibility that's dragging you back, as it were. And I remember him once saying to me, because I was still not really a profit owner at that point. He said, "It's all right for you, Matt." And he said, "But you don't actually have to bring in the sales, and that sort." And so from that point, I very quickly said, "No, I want to do sales and show that I could do it." And fortunately, it worked out all right for me. But I did realize that there's one thing, it's easy to point out when somebody's not hitting target, but it's completely different when you own a target, and you've got to deliver it. And then the other thing is, and a lot of people that who own their own business will get this as well. When you move to owning your own business, when you're in a large company or whatever, the big thing you never ever think about is cash. And as soon as you've got your own business, it's, oh my God, I've got to think about cash. So and that's a big rude awakener. So you got bills to pay, you got your staff to feed, all that sort of thing. They've got their families and whatever. And that's quite a sobering thing, and that's what keeps you going. I think most of us keeps it going is, you get to, once you've started off and once you got to a certain size, you want the success and you want it to grow, but you've got your team, and you're doing it for your team, because, and your team's doing it for you. You're all doing it together, and you're in it together at that point. So that's the bit that keeps you front and center.
Well, you hit a very salient point that many founders have missed, and that is, if you want to be successful, especially in the software game, you've got to be the first sales executive for your firm and get a few across the line so that you know what it takes before you begin to build your sales organization and hand that off to someone. So you're not oblivious to what is going to be required to get that job done. And, I like that first quote, and it's particularly apropos on this Valentine's Day. You have to stop and smell the roses. And I'm going to wish you a wonderful Valentine's Day with your lovely, and I hope you get to go home and enjoy those roses that are there thanks to your forethought and sensitivity. Martin, thank you so much for spending some time with us today, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, Errol. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Martalks. Please leave a review and a rating on your platform of choice. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all major podcast platforms. To find out more about how the Rosenstein Group can help you find the right leaders for your client development teams in MarTech and e-commerce, please visit our website, rosensteingroup.com.